My name is Sam. I head up the marketing team at a company called Datanyze. How many of you guys are familiar with Datanyze? Show of hands. All right, about half. So Datanyze is a sales acceleration software company. We sell primarily to B2B SaaS companies, and our main sort of value add is that we collect the technology stacks of over 40 million different websites, and we can tell you, based on the technology stacks, which customers have the highest propensity to buy your product. The adage that we always say is, you know, HubSpot uses us to see who uses Marketo, and Marketo does the same thing with HubSpot. So it's pretty cyclical, but that's how it works. But the purpose of the conversation today is to talk about the marketing tech stack of some of today's top SMB tech providers. So I think everybody here is either founder, CEO, or sort of VP line at a SaaS B2B company. So hopefully by looking at some of the tech stacks that other successful SaaS companies have had, we're able to glean some knowledge and potentially build out your own marketing tech stack. So the way that I wanted to preface the conversation is that there's a crap ton of different technologies that are available to you, especially as marketers. And this is the LumaScape. Luma partners come out with this obviously every year. And there's thousands and thousands of different tools on it based in hundreds and hundreds of categories. So my job for you guys today is to hopefully narrow that down to a few different specific categories of tools and a few different vendors within those categories that are making a big splash with other SMB technology providers. Cool. So before I go into the results, I want to go over the methodology a little bit. So we took the tech stacks of about 631 SMB technology providers. This is kind of a quick snapshot of some of the sort of bigger names on the list, but if you look up there, you've got Intuit, Recurly, HubSpot, Shopify, the whole nine. But we basically took the top 631 of those and we analyzed their tech stack to see what kind of marketing tech tools that they're using. And the requirements to make that list were threefold. So you had to be a SaaS technology. And the second was you had to have at least 5,000 customers. So I use the word customers a little bit loosely there based on the way that Datanyze aggregates its data. But the idea is we look at the technologies on different websites. So if there are more than 5,000 websites using one of these technology providers' technologies, then we decided that it made the cut. And then the third criteria for the list was having a trackable technology. What I mean by this is that generally the way that Datanyze works is that we crawl websites and we look at the source code, we look at SPF records, anything that might be available, a JavaScript snippet, HTML, anything that would be available on the front end generally of a website, and we categorize these signatures. So an example is, and I'll go into this a little bit later, but Google Analytics has a tag of JavaScript that you install on your website. And the way that we track Google Analytics is we look for that JavaScript tag. So in order to make this list, you need to have a trackable tech. Great. So as I mentioned, Datanyze is crawling about 40 million websites every single day. We're collecting information on about 1,500 different technology providers. And we also look at the different firmographic information and the contacts behind every website. So this is just a good visual of a little bit of a snapshot into BuzzFeed.com. We can see that they're using for Akamai for CDN, ComScore and Adobe for analytics. They're hosting with AWS, and they're using their CMS as WordPress, and they've got Bluekai and SendGrid for advertising and email marketing, respectively. And then I mentioned before technology signatures. This is just sort of a look sort of at the deeper dive methodology of what we're talking about here. So for example, you see there double-click. We're using href just in the HTML tag. Omniture, we're using the JavaScript tag. Same with Marketo, same with Google Analytics. It can get more complex than that, but that's the general methodology, is that we're looking for those snippets across all these different websites, and we're using these signatures or footprints, like we like to call them, that leave a trace of that technology on that website. So, going to move on to the findings. these are the top MarTech tools that these providers are using by category. And I don't know, is this graph kind of hard to read? Cool. So I will read it. So 97% of the technology providers we looked at were using at least one analytics platform. And then I'll also make these slides available on SlideShare. But we've also got in that, we've got video hosting is the next most prominent. The third most prominent is advertising on down the list, CMS, retargeting, marketing automation is at about 49%. And then on down we've got tag management, A/B testing, email delivery, live chat is at 33%, support, DMP, comments, what do we got? Webinar platforms is at 14%, and then at the very bottom we have video advertising at 13%. I guess in hindsight I should have made these a bolder font. But regardless, this is sort of the breakdown of the different categories of tools across these different websites. So as you're building out your tech stack, this is kind of a good little checklist to have based on what you're trying to accomplish. So first things first, I mentioned that 97% of providers are using an analytics platform. And these are kind of the top 5 analytics platforms that we found across these websites. So you've obviously got Google Analytics. Most of these websites are using Google Analytics, baseline website traffic, understanding page views, goal setting, that kind of stuff. I think everybody understands Google. Second was Mixpanel. How many of you guys are familiar with Mixpanel? Okay, so most people are familiar. But the idea is that it's tracking events rather than just page views. A lot of people are sort of supplementing Google Analytics with Mixpanel to be able to track certain actions. So if, for example, if you have a free trial portal on your website and you need to understand each part of that trial portal, which buttons are being pressed, it's a great tool to use and create cohorts based on that. If you have a Chrome extension, a mobile app, anything like that, Mixpanel is a really powerful tool to use that. And we're seeing a lot of validation in the market for that. And then the third one I want to talk about is Crazy Egg. How many of you guys are familiar with Crazy Egg? Pretty much everybody. Good. So behavioral tracking, heat mapping, stuff like that. Again, a really great tool for SMBs in particular, or people who are selling to SMBs that might have a lot of website traffic, to start to understand what pages have gaps, what pages are being visited more frequently, and then sort of what the behavior flow is between homepage and on down to product. Cool. So I thought this was pretty interesting that 73% of SMB technology providers that we looked at were using video hosting. And I think that sort of lends itself a lot to the fact that, you know, showing, not telling. So with SMB technology providers, it's really tough if you have a ton of customers to offer them one-on-one support. That's more sort of prevalent in the enterprise tech community, but if you're a small business, you know, you have to be able to scale support really easily. And we've noticed, and I checked this on a lot of these sites, that these guys are scaling support through video. So if you look at like a HubSpot or a Shopify, a lot of their video or a lot of their supports have videos in them and how-tos. So this is a pretty scalable, quick, dropping in the embed code from like a YouTube or a Vimeo to scale your support efforts and get to a lot of people faster. And then, how many of you guys are familiar with Wistia? Okay, most people. So Wistia, again, is a really great tool to supplement hosting. It does hosting and lead gen, so basically lets you put up gated videos if you ever have like a webinar that you want to use as gated content. If you have a product video or a case study video, Wistia is a great tool, and it's pretty cheap. I think it's free for a certain amount of megs every month, and then it goes up to about $50 to $100 for the really premium stuff. But it's a fairly inexpensive tool to get video demand gen going. And then you've also got Vidyard and Brightcove on that list, which are also just video hosting solutions. Great. And then the third one, I skipped down past advertising and CMS to retargeting. I think it goes without saying that retargeting is a pretty prevalent ad strategy right now, but I thought it was pretty interesting that now more people are actually using Facebook retargeting than are using Google remarketing. And I think that speaks volumes to the engagement that is happening on Facebook rather than the Google sort of display and retargeting networks. So we saw that interesting change there. Also down towards the bottom are a couple of aggregators. You look at like an AdRoll or a Criteo that take social network retargeting with Google and Yahoo, and they sort of throw it into one same platform. So you can retarget against multiple channels with sort of less efforts on your side and sort of have one dashboard for all of that. Cool. So this is the slide that I wish everybody could see a lot better. But the idea is that we took all of the different technologies that we found across all of these providers' websites, and we tried to put it into what I would like to call a power rankings. So the x-axis is the website count out of the 631 SMB tech providers. The x-axis is the number of websites that these were found on, these different solutions. And then the y-axis is the percentage onto that category of technologies. So I'll explain this a little bit further. So if you look all the way to the top right, you've got Google Analytics. Google Analytics is on about 580 of the 631 different SMB providers, and it's about 90% of the analytics category. So 90% of companies that are using an analytics platform are using Google Analytics. But if you look at something like Discuss, which is up there to the top left, you can see that it's only on about 100 or so of the 631 SMB tech providers' websites, but it's pretty prevalent within what's discussed as a commenting platform, but it's actually used, the people that are using a commenting platform, about 80% of them are using Discuss. So you can kind of get a feel here for what would be sort of like relative category giants versus the number of websites that are getting used by each technology. So again, you've got sort of LiveRamp, which tends to own their category, Google Tag Manager, WordPress, Facebook retargeting, things like that, and then so on and so forth. But again, I'll make these slides available if you want to take a look. There's definitely a lot of good technologies on here that you might want to check out. Great. So this next slide, I mentioned that Datanyze crawls 40 million websites every single day. So the cool part that we're able to aggregate is different historical data on how many websites are using a certain technology. So I took a look at a bunch of different ones on that list, and I chose two in particular because I think they're growing really fast. And this is something that has been verified by our data as well. But the first one is a look at Facebook Web Custom Audiences, so Facebook's advertising network. And it's hard to see, I guess, but those three lines are troughs of Alexas. Are you guys familiar with Alexa Rank? Decently familiar? Okay, so for those who aren't, Alexa is basically a traffic rank. They rate it by how much traffic a website gets. So Google's number one, Facebook's number two, so on and so forth until you get into the millions. But the idea is across the Alexa 1 million, which is that blue line, that's how many websites are using Facebook Audience Network over the years. So if you look back when it first started at the end of 2014, it announced and it was about 20,000 websites, but it's grown to almost 100,000 websites over the last year that are using Facebook for advertising in the Alexa 1 million. And the second software I want to take a look at is Intercom. How many have heard of Intercom? Intercom, great. So it's grown about 2,000 websites in the last year, which I think is pretty phenomenal for a support type platform like Intercom. So the idea is that they handle all of your customer communications, whether it's live chat on the site, pushing product updates, and they're also, I believe, about to come out with a Zendesk style support interface where you can handle all support articles. Cool. And then last but not least, I did my best at assembling 3 different tech stacks based on your marketing style. I probably forgot to ask, how many people are marketers here? Okay, that's decent. So as you think about building your stack, there's lots of different tips out there, lots of different information on what technologies to consider and how you should build it based on what you want your funnel to be and what you want your buyer's journey to look like. But here's 3 different examples. So I've broken it down into sort of like the content marketing stack for people who are looking to grow organically through SEO, the advertising stack for people who are looking to use sort of like CPL campaigns to grow their audience, and then lastly sort of like the growth hacker A/B tester tech stack. A few different characteristics in there. You've got kind of a best-in-breed in terms of the content feed with who's hosting the content. So you've got WordPress, a super flexible blogging platform. Discuss plugs in really nicely to that. So does AddThis. Citrix was the most prominent webinar platform that we found out there. It was about, I think it was a little over 35% market share of the webinar platforms. And then obviously HubSpot was a leader in marketing automation. It wasn't as high up on the list as Marketo, but it did have over 30% market share. And HubSpot's a great tool for sort of small businesses. They have great SEO, keyword targeting tools. They have a great UI, and we use them too. So I put HubSpot up there. Advertiser, I think depending on what you want to advertise to and what your market is, there's a lot of different great solutions out there. Sort of building the base with Tag Manager and Analytics is a must, but you know, if LiveRamp using as a DMP to take your offline data online, and then using that to power something like a Facebook Audience Network, Twitter, LinkedIn, Brightcove for video, things like that. And then last but not least, the Growth Hacker. This is if you really like digging into the data. You've got your base of Google Analytics and Google Remarketing because it's fairly inexpensive, and then you've got different mixed panel optimizing Crazy Egg on top of that to really get a good feel for how your users are interacting with whether it's your UI or your website, and then using that data to then power your marketing programs. Cool. So one last takeaway that I wanted to mention was if you have a particular website or a particular company that you would like to emulate your tech stack off of, we have a great free Chrome extension that basically gives you one-click access to the tech stack of any website. So you can go onto our website right now. We have a big obnoxious banner that asks you to download this extension. So I don't really need to talk about it anymore, but the idea is that it helps you uncover the tech stack of any website, and it'll actually, it's hard to see, but there's a little eyeball up there, and it'll actually tell you which ones are live on the website right now. So it's a great tool for, you know, if you're a salesperson looking to figure out what tech stack your prospects are using, or if you're CS looking to see which ones your customers are using, that kind of stuff. So with that, that's the end of what I've got. I'll take any questions that you might have regarding tech stacks or Datanyze or anything you want.